The incompetent Zelensky could not have come to power on his credentials. But then, how did he? Hello and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host, Atul Mishra. Let's begin. Amidst the Ukraine war, the unlikely friendship between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Joe Biden has gone beyond political ties. Today, they are being seen as father and son. Castro and Trudeau. Zelensky, a former comedian turned politician, and Biden, a career politician, have developed a strong bond that has helped solidify the relationship between the two countries. Zelensky was elected as Ukraine's president in 2019, and the presidential Democrat leader, Joe Biden, was among the first world leaders to congratulate him on his victory. Since then, the two leaders have met several times, both in person and virtually, to discuss various issues, including Ukraine's ongoing war with Russia, the COVID-19 pandemic, and, of course, economic cooperation. Since the beginning of the Ukraine war, majority of aid and support has come from the US, being valued at 73.2 billion euros or $77 billion. The US has also pressurized NATO allies to aid Ukraine in its bid to defeat Russia. Nevertheless, despite all efforts, Russia has annexed close to 30% of Ukraine. The US is still supplying weapons, though, and it shows no signs of stopping. Every other day, civilians are dying, cities are collapsing like a deck of cards, and Russia is ingesting Ukrainian weaponry like tacos. What appears to be quite surprising is that despite calls for peace, either Biden or Zelensky's escalatory provocations cause the negotiations to break down. They are thought of to one's opposing peace. However, they are not acting according to their own desires. They both are acting on someone else's behalf, and they are controlling the strings. Have you ever heard the name Victoria Nuland and Igor Kolomoisky? Pentagon knows these two individuals as they were once the most influential people in Ukraine. Starting with Kolomoisky. Igor Kolomoisky is one of the most influential and powerful oligarchs of Ukraine. The oligarch even grew his portfolio to oversee one of Ukraine's biggest banks, Privatbank, refashion itself as a steward of Ukraine's finance sector. However, the man has a really dark and sinister background. In the aftermath of Ukraine's 2014 Euromaidan revolution, the oligarch then refashioned himself into a supporter of Ukrainian statehood. Kolomoisky owns a private military group in Ukraine known as Dnipro Battalion. This group was formed in 2014 during the conflict between Ukraine and pro-Russian separatists in the eastern part of the country. Using his private military, Kolomoisky has also forcefully attempted to overtake several Ukrainian businesses. The oligarch denies having any association with the group directly, but numerous reports have connected him to its activities. The group has been cited for extrajudicial killings and other violations of human rights, and its members have come under fire for lack of discipline and even training. Due to these factors, Kolomoisky was hated immensely by the US. The United States also banned him later on these allegations. But an enemy's enemy is a friend, and so US later turned to him. As Kolomoisky was an influential oligarch, former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych hated him. There was mutual hatred. Kolomoisky's hatred for Yanukovych has been well documented, and he has been accused of using his influence to target Yanukovych and his allies. Viktor Yanukovych was a pro-Russia leader, and so he was also the bone of contention for US leaders. But for one lady, Yanukovych's removal was of utmost importance. Victoria Nuland wanted Yanukovych out of power at any cost. Victoria Nuland is an American diplomat who served as the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs under President Barack Obama and a spokesperson for Hillary Clinton. She played a key role in shaping US foreign policy towards Europe, including policy towards Ukraine and Russia. During her time in office, she advocated for democratic reforms and closer ties between Ukraine and the West, and was a vocal critic of Putin and Yanukovych's actions in the region. During the Euromaidan protests, Nuland was among the first Western politicians to voice her support against Yanukovych. Nuland was in Kiev along with EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, trying to convince the government and the opposition to work out a solution to the crisis. Photos posted on Twitter showed Nuland shaking hands with security personnel, and there were many reports that she had helped distribute food to the protesters. In several leaked tapes, Nuland was also heard helping Ukrainian opposition leaders and discussing expansion of protests. The leaked conversation was quite colorful, in which Nuland was even heard saying, "F the EU." So, of course, the leaked conversation caused a diplomatic uproar and strained relations between the US and other Western nations. Nuland later apologized for her remarks, but the incident highlighted the sensitive nature of US's involvement in Ukrainian politics and raised questions about the extent of US influence in the region. After the Crimean annexation, it became inevitable that Yanukovych will resign. Then came Petro Poroshenko, who had the support of the US, but not of Ukraine's most powerful oligarch. Just like with Yanukovych, Igor Kolomoisky had a strained relationship with Petro Poroshenko as well. Following Poroshenko's election, there were tensions between the two over Kolomoisky's ownership of Private Bank. In 2016, the National Bank of Ukraine, or NBU, nationalized Private Bank due to concerns over its financial stability. Kolomoisky challenged the decision in court, but ultimately lost his case. The dispute between Kolomoisky and the Ukrainian government continued, and in 2019, the government filed a lawsuit against Kolomoisky in the US, alleging that he and his business partners had embezzled $5.5 billion from Private Bank. 2019 was again the election year, and so it was Kolomoisky's chance of removing Poroshenko from power. Well, the Ukrainian president was already quite unpopular, so he decided to push his best friend, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, to power. In 2019, Kolomoisky owned 70% of the 1+1 media group, whose TV station aired the comedy series Servant of the People, in which Volodymyr Zelenskyy was portrayed as a teacher who, against all odds, including his own, won the presidency of Ukraine on a platform against corruption. Member of Zelenskyy's production company, Quartal 95, registered Servant of the People as a new political party in March 2018. Political rivals, including the incumbent Poroshenko, saw Zelenskyy as Kolomoisky's choice. Zelenskyy made Kolomoisky's personal attorney a crucial member of his campaign team, frequently visited Kolomoisky in his self-imposed exile in Tel Aviv and Geneva, and received the support of Kolomoisky's media conglomerate. Once in power, Zelenskyy appeared to oust leaders seen as a threat to Kolomoisky's interests. These included the Prosecutor General Ruslan Ryaboshapka, the Governor of the National Bank of Ukraine, Yakov Smoly, and Zelenskyy's first Prime Minister, Oleksiy Honcharuk, who attempted to weaken Kolomoisky's control over a state-owned electricity company. Zelenskyy's victory was also a big win for Nuland, as a hardcore pro-Western president was now sitting in Kiev. Victoria Nuland has supported NATO's expansion all the way up to Russia's border ever since she served as the US ambassador to NATO during President George W. Bush's second term. She has often been tagged as a lobbyist for the American weapon industry. Nuland always had an intention of putting Moscow under constant threat of NATO-led attacks if it disobeyed rules established by the US and its NATO allies. Additionally, Nuland intended to place Ukraine directly under the control of the US and NATO, giving it a similar status to Afghanistan, which has been governed by Washington's puppets for decades. The goal of Nuland's plan was to make Ukraine a danger to Russia. This is one of the major reasons why Nuland is still the biggest supporter of Zelenskyy in the USA after Biden, and why Kolomoisky is also happily sitting on war printing money over a heap of dead bodies that are getting rendered every day. There are reports of Yanukovych's Ukrainian citizenship getting scrapped and he getting raided for corruption scandals amidst a war. However, just use your logical instincts to determine how is it practically possible for a man who has previously used soft power to overthrow two presidents has turned a blind eye towards Zelenskyy's actions. The move is pre-planned, premeditated. The war won't end until US's war profiteering target is met. Joe Biden and those other Western leaders can't do anything to stop the war in Ukraine because of the military-industrial complex. They want it to continue so that hundreds of millions of dollars can keep pouring into their bank accounts. Key Western policymakers who benefit from the military-industrial complex are also opposed to the immediate end of the Ukraine war. Zelenskyy's position as the populist's leader is a complete cover-up. Zelenskyy is not fighting for his people. Rather, he is fighting for the American weapon industry, which is funded by the American deep state and Kolomoisky's support. As long as Kolomoisky also continues to profit from the ongoing war, Zelensky remains safe and hence in power.